Into the western Northern Ireland late in the day, but England and Wales isolated lighter showers. Most will be dry, temperatures closer to where we should be for this stage in June. That's it looking. Charlie, back to you.
Monday is going to be cool relief, isn't it? Looks like it, that, Matt.
It will be, but it's still pretty warm. Temperatures still just a touch above average.
Yeah. Thanks, Matt.
Now it's time for Newswatch. Back with the headlines at 8.
Hello and welcome to Newswatch with me, Samira Ahmed. With the new single channel for both domestic and international audiences, are UK viewers getting a news service that meets their needs? And is a TV news channel the right place for a radio phone-in show for 2 hours every weekday?
Good morning, welcome.
It's 12 weeks since the BBC's 2 news channels became one single operation, so time to take stock of the new service, which we'll be doing throughout this programme with its boss, Paul Royal. At some times of the day, UK viewers see a separate dedicated feed, for example between 9 and 11 every weekday morning, when Nikki Campbell's 5 live radio phone-in programme is shown.
Nikki Campbell. Listen on BBC Sounds and watch on iPlayer.
Good morning, good to see you. Thanks.
A number of viewers, though, have told us they don't believe a news channel is the right place for a phone-in show. Here are 2 of them.
We now have the option of watching either a radio phone-in programme, which is simultaneously broadcast on Radio 5 if we wanted to listen to it, or switching to a competitor's news coverage, none of which hold a candle to the BBC's normal offering. So between 9 and 11 a.m. every weekday morning is now a news desert. We've also lost a number of excellent news presenters, the likes of Anita McVeigh and Martin Croxall, who brought empathy and interest to their broadcasts. And whilst I know that the BBC in these straitened times have to save money, surely there are other ways in which this can be done without losing the fundamental quality of BBC news coverage.
If I wanted to listen to a radio phone-in or even participate, then I go to the radio. Television news and BBC News is a particular medium which is important for a range of things. I don't understand why you're doing it. Is it cost saving? If so, it just seems to be misplaced. The effect of it is that I, and I suspect many others, migrate to another news medium, and that's Sky News.
On the point mentioned by Cheryl there about the loss of presenters such as Anita McVeigh and Martin Croxall, we asked the BBC about their status and that of other female presenters all over 45 who haven't appeared on the news channel since March. The BBC told us, "We value all of our staff, but we do not comment on individual HR matters." Well, let's talk now to Paul Royal, who is in charge of the news channel. First thing in the morning then, Nikki Campbell's show. It's already on the radio. It's already on BBC Two. Why isn't the news channel showing the BBC News output going out across the world? Because that would be a real choice for viewers, wouldn't it, Paul?
The Nikki Campbell show takes UK viewers to the heart of talking points every morning, and these talking points are based in news stories. Obviously, there's news headlines and updates in the Nikki Campbell show, and headlines that run across the bottom of the screen. And of course, as you've seen, on those mornings when perhaps there is a clash, whether there is a big news story or a press conference, for example, earlier in the week when the Prime Minister and Ukraine's President were speaking at the Ukraine conference in London, we ran that news conference instead of Nikki Campbell. So we're flexible as well. But the programme takes us to people and places and talking points which we think are really valuable to the channel.
Another question about programmes then is later in the day there are these 3 strands: Verified Live, the Daily Global and the Context. Our viewers are saying they're all just news, they're not unique programming. What's the point of this branding?
Well, obviously, we've only launched that branding fairly recently. The channel isn't in its new format even 3 months old. And so to take Verified Live, for example, that programme has a relationship with BBC Verify, which is the new team and hub that we've set up in the newsroom, which is going deeper behind stories and checking stories out in a more forensic and data-led and analytical way. And so, for example, we make space every day to make sure we feature content and analysis from BBC Verify. So that's a way in which that programme is forging its own identity.
We're going to pause there just for a moment, Paul, to look at the content of the news on the channel, the programming and the international versus the UK focus. So despite that separate stream for UK viewers at certain times of the day, most of the output is shared with audiences around the world. And in the eyes of some, that's led to domestic news being downgraded at the expense of international events.
Reporting live from Singapore.
Overnight, that's reflected not just in the choice of stories, but in the presentation too, which comes from Singapore and from Washington. This emphasis on foreign news hasn't gone down well with everyone.
My name's Elizabeth Blackmore. I'm concerned by what has happened to BBC News channel. It seems to have lots and lots of international news with lots of international presenters. Really, we need a channel that reflects where it originates from. So can we please go back to just having the BBC News channel as it was with the newsreaders it had?
So, Paul, many licence fee payers who've long been watchers of the news channel are really unhappy that they no longer get a dedicated UK BBC News service. And it's not like UK News is boring right now. Are you going to have to rethink this?
Well, again, there's a couple of things there. As you said at the beginning, the channel operates in a couple of ways. There's a combined feed when the same content is going out to the world and to the UK, but we also have periods when the feed is separate as well, with a global feed and a UK feed. And so obviously then that is very UK facing. We also have the ability to break stories out and spend more time on a big UK story through the day. For example, when those terrible events in Nottingham occurred a couple of weeks ago, and we were able to spend the whole day covering those events for UK audiences. And it's interesting because we've just run some audience survey, which is just run by our audience team, which has just come back, and actually 60% of UK viewers who we've surveyed think the balance is about right between UK and global news. And of those who are left, it's evenly split between some who think there's too much UK and not enough global, and some who think there's too much global and not enough UK. So at this point, and we're thinking about this all the time, of course, we're always thinking about this, but we feel like we are sort of broadly in the right place.
Some viewers, as we've heard, they really dislike the overnight presentation from Singapore and Washington. Does it really feel like a British news channel at those times?
Well, obviously what we're doing is we've got a combined news channel. It's UK and it's global, and what we're doing with this sort of idea of following the sun and broadcasting live from Singapore and from Washington DC through sort of UK nighttime hours. And what that means is you've got really dynamic teams who are delivering from different parts of the world during their daytime, covering events in their region, but also events around the world as well. So to give you a good example, our brilliant team in Washington DC, the big interview they secured a few weeks ago with one of the godfathers of AI and his fears about what AI could do, that was secured by them through the night. It's obviously a highly important big subject, and was the lead story not just across the BBC but across lots of places the following morning. So that's one of the advantages we get by teams who are active and chasing down stories.
Thank you, Paul. Another concern we've heard over the past few weeks is the range of stories being covered on the news channel, and a tendency some feel they've detected to stick almost obsessively to one topic.
Thanks for coming.
One example we featured on this programme was the departure of Philip Schofield from ITV's This Morning after an affair with a young colleague. Similar complaints surfaced the following week when Prince Harry appeared in the High Court in his case against the Daily Mirror. And this week, the channel has spent many hours covering the search for the missing submersible, the Titan, which ended on Thursday with the confirmation that its 5 passengers had died. On the subject of the Titan, Richard Gayton emailed, "Extremely sad to lose 5 people in a submersible expedition, but why almost non-stop coverage on the news channel for hour after hour? Hardly a mention on the news when 500 or 600 poor souls drowned in the Mediterranean. Very unbalanced news coverage yet again by the BBC." So, Paul, let's deal with that issue, the contrasting coverage of the Titan submersible and the sinking of a migrant boat in the Mediterranean last week, in which 500 to 600 people are believed dead. And many viewers feel the BBC got that balance wrong, and also that there was something ethically distasteful about that alleged imbalance. What do you say?
Well, obviously the Titan and what happened has been the dominant news story of the last few days. and there has been a lot of coverage, and there has been a huge audience engagement with that story. But it would be wrong to say that BBC News was not covering extensively what happened in the Mediterranean a week ago. We were in Kalamata reporting live and extensively from there. We had a piece from Pakistan-administered Kashmir just last night, going to one of the villages where 28 of the victims are thought to have come from. We are still in Kalamata today interviewing survivors from that terrible incident, and probably one of the most significant pieces of journalism from anyone over the past week on this story was when the BBC and BBC News established and challenged the Greek Coast Guard's version of events in terms of what happened in the seas, and this idea that the boat was continuously moving to Italy.
Another big issue and a complaint on the news channel for many viewers is the rolling hours spent on a story that viewers think isn't developing. So an example is Waiting for Prince Harry at court, the Philip Schofield story, and viewers say, why hang on for hours, often with the reporter standing outside a building filling airtime when there's nothing new to say?
Yeah, and again, we always strive to try and get that balance right. One thing we do know is that audiences, or some audiences at least, want that pre-build to a story, and we get that through our data. Of course, it's not always an exact science, and sometimes we get it wrong. We're obviously not perfect in that regard, and we, at the same time, we do want to deliver a high story count for viewers, and we do want to take them to other subjects and issues as well. So we think about it hard. When there is a big story, we know that audiences want to immerse themselves in it, so that's part of the logic behind what we're doing, but we're conscious of this and we always try and strike the right balance.
Paul Royal, thank you so much. Thank you for all your comments this week. If you want to share your opinions about what you see or hear on BBC News, on TV, radio, online and social media, email newswatch@bbc.co.uk, or you can find us on Twitter @NewsWatchBBC. You can call us on 0370 010 6676 and do have a look at previous interviews on our website, bbc.co.uk/newswatch. That's all from us. We'll be back to hear your thoughts about BBC News coverage again next week. Goodbye.
Good morning and welcome to Breakfast with Nagarman Chetty and Charlie State.
Good morning to you. Just after 8 o'clock, let's bring you the headlines. Mutiny accusations the mercenaries used by Vladimir Putin against Ukraine turn on Russia.
The head of the Wagner Group vows to topple Russia's military leadership hours after the Kremlin accused him of armed rebellion. Putin is speaking right now to the nation. We'll hear some of that in just a moment.
Junior doctors will hold their longest strike yet. Next month, we'll see 5 days of continuous action.
Falmouth in Cornwall prepares to welcome thousands of visitors for Armed Forces Day.
Good morning. Brilliant Beaumont bashes England back into the Ashes. Tammy Beaumont's first century means the one-off women's test between England and Australia at Trent Bridge is now much more finely poised going into day 3.
And we're live at Glastonbury, where last night Arctic Monkeys headlined and Foo Fighters played the Pyramid stage with Paul McCartney watching on from the side. Today, it's all about Guns N' Roses, Lizzo and Rick Astley.
And in weather, a very warm and humid day to come right across the country, with more sunshine developing later. I'll have your full weekend forecast coming up here on Breakfast.
Good morning. It's Saturday, the 24th of June. Our main story this morning. Russian President Vladimir Putin is giving a televised address following a dramatic challenge by the chief of the Wagner mercenary group. We can see now I think live pictures of Putin's address from Moscow. This has just started in the last 2 minutes.
His comments are that coming through, quoting the president, Russian President Vladimir Putin, "We are fighting for life and the security of our people." This is after the leader of the mercenaries, Yevgeny Prigozhin, has been accused of mutiny after he called for a rebellion against Russia's army. And this follows accusations of a deadly attack on Wagner